Tonight, protests and the pandemic. Debate rages over whether this weekend's mass gatherings should have gone ahead. Good evening, I'm Juanita Phillips. This is ABC News Sunday. A deadly shark attack in northern New South Wales. Police praised the surfers who tried to save the man. Protests in the US show no sign of slowing down in one of the biggest days yet. And could online church services be here to stay even after the pandemic?
Explored the outside world into the house and that's been lovely because I haven't felt isolated at all.
Medical experts are on the alert for a surge in coronavirus infections in the coming days following the nationwide Black Lives Matter protests. Tens of thousands of people marched in solidarity, defying social distancing restrictions and political leaders who urged them to stay home. As political editor Andrew Probyn reports, the protesters have been criticised by a senior minister in the Morrison government who labelled them selfish and self-indulgent.
The people can march!
Defiant nationwide mass protest
Black Lives Matter!
amid a pandemic. The Black Lives Matter movement, inspired by the death of Black American George Floyd at the hands of a white police officer, inviting reflection about Australia's record on race relations, its high rates of Indigenous incarceration, the hundreds of deaths in custody. A moment of unified reckoning? Hardly.
I think it is incredibly selfish.
Cabinet Minister Matthias Cormann condemning protesters, saying they had recklessly defied medical advice and risked unpicking efforts to control the coronavirus curve.
It's incredibly self-indulgent, and yes, I mean, it does impose unnecessary and unacceptable risk onto the community.
Matthias Cormann should know better.
Labor's Linda Burney saying all political leaders should listen to a cry from the heart from those calling out inequality.
It struck me, listening to people at the protest, that they were very conscious of what the health risks are. And we even saw police officers in Queensland handing out face masks.
But Matthias Cormann was unrepentant, saying no one should forget the enormous sacrifices already made.
People have been unable to attend funerals of their loved ones to help stop the spread of the virus. But we're going to have a mass gathering of tens of thousands of people in complete breach of the rules that apply to anybody else. It is absolutely reckless.
WA's Treasurer Ben Wyatt says he understands the passion of protesters, but is anxious about the risk to those they march for.
The people who'll be most under threat for an outbreak of coronavirus are Aboriginal people.
Medical authorities now on the alert in case COVID-19 was an invisible presence at protests.
If there were to be a number of cases that were to develop related to the protests, then that would be a game changer.
No time is ever entirely convenient for uncomfortable truths, but balancing a democratic right to protest and the need to protect the population from a highly infectious virus is devilishly difficult. If the protests do cause a spike in infections, everyone will lose if it delays the reopening of the economy. Andrew Probyn, ABC News, Canberra.
New South Wales police have defended the use of capsicum spray on a small number of protesters after yesterday's march in Sydney. The confrontation at Central Station was an ugly end to an otherwise peaceful event. Ashley Raper reports.
A standoff at Central Station. Protesters and police, then a shower of capsicum spray. It was an aggressive end to a largely peaceful day when tens of thousands marched through the streets to show Black Lives Matter.
Whose lives matter? Black Lives Matter!
But after it was all over, things changed in one pocket of the city.
I support the use of the capsicum spray and the way that the police responded in order to ensure that there was not further violence.
A 21-year-old was arrested and charged after he allegedly became violent. Outside the station, police say there was another scuffle. A police car was hit with a brick and an officer hurt by a drink can thrown at his face.
The fact that there were a number of groups of individuals after the protest that chose to act unlawfully is disappointing to us.
Organisers insist it shouldn't overshadow the event.
Absolutamente nothing that could make our day bad. Our day was one of the best days in the history of the Aboriginal struggle.
Protests continued elsewhere in the state today.
Still no justice.
In Dubbo, it was peaceful and reflective.
We are disadvantaged. We're trying to close the gap. At the end of the day, man, we just want our voices to be heard. We want to hear our people's voices and we want to be justified.
And there was a new generation vowing to take on the fight.
I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm committed, I'm passionate to making change. But, we need our, non-Indigenous allies to stand up for us.
A stand together in a significant time. Ashley Raper, ABC News.
Police have praised the efforts of surfers who tried to save a man mauled by a shark at Kingscliff near the Queensland border. The 60-year-old Queensland man was bitten on the upper leg while he was surfing and died of his injuries. Beaches in the area have been closed, but authorities say the shark is unlikely to be found.
An ocean predator lingers in the waters off Kingscliff after a morning surf turns deadly. A 60-year-old man was attacked by a 3-metre shark while surfing at Salt Beach. His friend and another surfer tried desperately to save him, fighting the animal off and dragging him to shore. But injuries to his upper leg were just too significant.
Unfortunately, there was nothing we could do.
The men who helped are being praised for their bravery.
The actions of those people was nothing short of heroic today.
Lifesavers quickly cleared the beach and spent the afternoon working with marine police, trying to track the shark. This one off the shore was being closely monitored, believed to be the shark involved in the deadly attack.
We all know that's where they live, that's where they are, and to keep track of all the sharks out there is very hard.
Surf lifesavers say that until today there had been no recent shark sightings on the Tweed coast.
It's a very strong surf fraternity, being so close to southeast Queensland and the surfing coast of Byron Bay. It will send a lot of shockwaves through him.
Very sad for his family because his mum bloke not going home.
I'm definitely feeling a bit shaky.
Even if authorities can confirm it is the shark responsible, police say it's unlikely it'll be destroyed, as it has left the area and is no longer considered a threat. Baz Ruddick, ABC News, Kingscliff.
A boating accident south of Sydney has claimed the life of a 5-year-old boy and a 28-year-old man. Late yesterday, rescue crews were called to Bulli Point near Wollongong after a boat capsized in rough conditions. A rescue helicopter crew pulled 2 men from the water before the search was called off due to fading light. This morning, divers found the 5-year-old's body inside the boat, and late today they also found the body of a man.
Whether they knew the area, look, I don't know, but I'm not here to say that whatever they did was right or wrong. It's a tragedy.
The local community left a simple tribute for the lost child. 4 teenagers have been killed in a car crash in North Queensland. Police say the group was driving a stolen car the wrong way down a road in Townsville when they lost control. 2 girls and 2 boys aged between 13 and 18 died at the scene. A 14-year-old boy was taken to hospital in a stable condition with minor injuries.
From my understanding, the person was the driver, but yeah, that will form part of our investigation as well.
The Queensland Premier has described the incident as tragic beyond words. It's been another day of big protests across the United States, sparked by the death of African-American man George Floyd. The anti-racism marches were among the largest seen so far. They coincided with another memorial service in Mr Floyd's honour. North America correspondent James Glenday reports.
After 12 straight days of demonstrations, activists wanted these gatherings to be the biggest yet.
We're not free in a racist system.
Thousands of people took to the streets of Philadelphia and New York City.
Black Lives Matter.
In San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge was shut down, while the centre of Washington, D.C. was brought to a complete standstill.
It's unfortunate for the reason that we're here, but it's beautiful that everyone is able to come together and do what's right.
In the country's capital, nearly a dozen different events were held despite the heat and humidity. The newly named Black Lives Matter Plaza in front of the White House was the focal point. It's taken on the feel of a street festival with musicians and food stalls.
Free water, candy, snacks!
Few here have much nice to say about Donald Trump's response to these rolling protests so far.
Honestly, I think he'd rather be much of a dictator than a president. I mean, hopefully we get him out of office and we get somebody in there who's really about the people and about the country.
In anticipation of today, the Commander-in-Chief's residence had been reinforced with another ring of fencing. Most businesses were boarded up too and covered with statements of solidarity after looting earlier this week, though things were largely peaceful on the streets today.
Many people here have been encouraged by similar demonstrations across the nation and indeed in other countries as well. They're hopeful now the eyes of the world are on America that politicians will actually act and tackle entrenched racism.
The scene was much more sombre in the state of North Carolina, where George Floyd was remembered at the second of 3 memorial services.
Not only did we lose a family member, but y'all watched as well. And y'all was helpless too.
Again, his family and friends called for authorities to urgently crack down on police brutality.
I'm telling law enforcement all over the world, if you see that mess, get it out of your house.
Some in the crowd were pleased by news 2 officers have been charged with assault over this incident at a protest in Buffalo, New York. But in a sign of the power police unions wield, hundreds of their colleagues protested outside the first court hearing.
Lock the cameras!
And shielded the 2 officers from waiting journalists before declaring the policemen were just following orders and shouldn't lose their jobs. James Glenday, ABC News, Washington.
Tens of thousands of Europeans have shown their support for the Black Lives Matter movement at protests across major cities. In Paris, they defied a government ban to take to the streets. The capital was just one of a dozen French cities to host a rally. There were similar scenes in Germany, where big crowds also marched in solidarity. Soccer players showed their support, some going down on one knee.
Oh my God, the horse is bolted!
In London, a protester was trampled when a mounted police officer was thrown to the ground and their horse bolted. Earlier, large crowds had gathered peacefully, packing the city centre to call for an end to institutionalised racism and police brutality. Rival groups of protesters and police have clashed on the streets of Lebanon for the first time since COVID restrictions were lifted. Anti-government protesters had taken to the streets of Beirut to continue to press their demands. They want early elections, an independent judiciary and action on the country's economic crisis. Groups of Hezbollah supporters tried to disrupt what had started out as a peaceful rally. Lebanon's economic woes have worsened over the past few months, with its currency losing value and inflation soaring. Still to come on ABC News Sunday, the long march for change. The black families and activists who say they want to seize this moment to drive change for their children.
We'll be back tomorrow and the next day and the next day, as they were chanting every single day until the change is made.
That special report coming up. Australian industry, including steel manufacturers, is backing calls for renewable energy to get us out of our economic slump. A new report has found not only would it be better for the environment than fossil fuels, but could create 3 times as many jobs. Here's National Science and Environment reporter Michael Slezak.
It's taken 2 years and 2,000 workers. Dundonnell Wind Farm in Western Victoria is almost complete and ready to produce enough electricity to power 250,000 homes.
You'll find that there's a very large number of wind farms that are already approved from a planning perspective, that have a grid connection, a little bit of support from government, and those projects will proceed.
Ernst & Young agrees. The accountancy firm was asked by WWF Australia to crunch the numbers on a renewable-led economic recovery.
We really have the opportunity to be a renewable export superpower. We need to make choices right now that are both good for jobs in the short term and position us for that larger export opportunity.
The Australian industry group represents 60,000 businesses and sees the economic slump as an opportunity.
This is a fork in the road, this is a pivot point, and we need to take advantage of the opportunity. You never waste a crisis.
EY calculated that each dollar of stimulus going to renewables would create 3 times as many jobs as fossil fuels. The plan includes electrifying all ground transport, fast-tracking approvals for existing clean energy proposals, and stimulating a clean manufacturing industry, including swapping gas with electricity.
We can't just flick a switch between a fossil fuel past and a renewables future. This is a journey that we're on as an economy, but business is playing its part, and it is very keen that we continue on that transition.
Newcastle's Mollycop Steelworks is already adapting processes for its 500-worker operation.
We've signed a long-term agreement with offtakes from a solar farm and a wind farm in regional New South Wales. The net result of that is it's reduced our carbon footprint by 40%.
For this 100-year-old factory, the future needs to be different to the past. They already get almost all their steel from scrap metal and are about to install new technology into their furnace.
That will enable us to replace carbon that's been derived from coal with rubber from old tyres.
The role for government in this is flexible, but it could involve building transmission lines, leading by example and shifting government cars and buses to electric power, and using tax breaks to incentivise companies to do most of the heavy lifting. The plan also calls for support for new industries, like this battery recycling and manufacturing company, mining materials for new batteries, equipment, and even fertiliser.
If we can make a circular battery industry, really it means that the resources that are needed to make new batteries are available through the old batteries. We don't have to rely solely on virgin material.
Industries new and old, looking towards a cleaner future. Michael Slezak, ABC News.
With fewer than 460 active cases of coronavirus across the country, Australia's efforts at flattening the curve have proven effective. But it's come at a huge cost. The nation is staring down its first recession in nearly 3 decades. But there are early signs we may already be on the way out of it. Alan Kohler reports.
Life's starting to get back to normal. There's cars in the street, people out and about, even sitting in restaurants. Now, on Wednesday, we learned that we're having a recession. But is it over already? In fact, will it even end up being a recession, technically? The last time the Bureau of Statistics announced a negative GDP number for the September quarter of 2016 it was later revised up to 0. The time before that, which was the March quarter of 2011, the minus 1.2% was later revised up to minus 0.3. So there's a better than even chance that this recession will get revised away as well, since the March quarter contraction of 0.3% was small enough to almost be a rounding error.
But Reserve Bank Governor Phillips said last week that this is the biggest economic contraction since the 1930s. So even if it all happens in one quarter, that is April, May and June, it'll be a recession all right.
But what is a recession? And don't tell me it's just 2 quarters of negative GDP. It's high unemployment. It's falling consumption. And collapsing retail sales. It's declining small business income. And it's rising government spending. So let's agree we're in a recession. But it's not just any recession, it's a real whopper.
But hang on a minute. Recessions are usually a mistake, caused by an attempt to control inflation or by some booming market going bust, like US property in 2007 or the stock market in 1929. And the whole thing's a big mess.
This one's no accident, it's deliberate. Maybe that means it won't be as messy and will end more quickly.
That's certainly what investors think. Look at what the world share market is doing. Shares are booming everywhere. Alternatively, the share market could be entirely divorced from reality, which wouldn't be the first time. We just don't know.
The only thing we do know is that real GDP fell by 0.3% in the March quarter, unless it's revised away again, of course.
When the bushfires tore through northern New South Wales late last year, one tiny town was nearly wiped off the map. Waitalaba near Glen Innes lost more than half of its 100 homes and 2 of its residents died. Life will never be the same, but some locals are starting to rebuild and they're getting some very welcome help from an Aboriginal organisation based some 250 kilometres away. Bushfire recovery reporter Philippa McDonald has more from Waitalaba.
When the bushfires converged on this valley on November the 8th last year, there were few places to run. And in this community of 100, 2 people died.
As I backed down the driveway, I knew everything was going to go, but my partner got burnt and my neighbour died.
Al Bacon's burnt arms are healing.
So it was from my sleeves down. So I was full thickness down my right arm here, where they got the skin graft there.
You're being held as a bit of a hero in all of this. What do you want people to know about how you're going now?
I'm doing pretty good. I really, in the grand scheme, I'm doing pretty good.
Volunteer firefighter Joe Borgia lost his house while trying to save others. He says he wished he could have done more.
But yeah, I know I shouldn't let it hurt me, but it does.
Known as an alternative commune off the beaten track and further isolated by COVID restrictions, few people have visited Waitalaba in recent months. But with the easing of travel restrictions, an Aboriginal mental health organisation from Tamworth has been fundraising, and they've come here with a barbecue, some goodies and a message.
I just want to get the message out that you're not forgotten. I want to emphasise to these people that we're only a phone call away. Give us a phone call if you're struggling.
Mayor Carol Sparks can't find the photos, but 4 decades ago, as a hippie, she walked the stock routes from Brisbane with her family and donkeys to start a new life here. Now she's leading a community navigating the impact of a disaster.
It was quite traumatic. The whole fire took away a lot of our lives. But we're very strong and we are looking forward to the future.
The children of Waitalaba lost their school.
For some of the children, they were on the town oval watching as their school burnt because that's the evacuation point.
But in record time, it's been rebuilt, powered by solar.
I think for the community that the new school or the school being rebuilt was really a sign that things could turn around pretty quickly.
All over the rest of Waitalaba, the clean-up has started, but it still has a long way to go. Waitalaba will never be the same. Before these bushfires swept through with such ferocity, 100 people lived here in 100 homes. Now 52 of them have been destroyed, and rebuilding will require what's never been required before: development applications and fire ratings. Living deep within the bush won't be an option. Dwellings will have to be within 200 metres of the road. Now 18 months old, Zeke is thriving and the family now lives in a pod as they're planning to rebuild. What do you say to those people who see you as the face of this catastrophe here at Waitalaba and they wonder how you're going?
It gives me lots of mixed emotions, definitely, because, you know, there were so many people who were affected. Being the face of a disaster is being the face of healing in the end. If you're the one at the start who was there and said, oh, look, this really bad thing happened to us, and then here we are 6 months later and you say, hey, that really bad thing happened to us, but now we're okay, that's better, isn't it?
Now to tonight's special report and the history of violence and racial discrimination that's grown into the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States. As we've seen this weekend, it's a message which has resonated here in Australia and right across the world. Nearly 50 years after his assassination, realising the dream of civil rights leader Martin Luther King remains just that, a dream. 1 in 1,000 black men and boys can still expect to die at the hands of American police. They also make up more than a third of the prison population, despite African Americans being just 12% of the total adult population. There has been some progress, but activists and black families believe this moment must be seized to drive change for the next generation. North America correspondent David Lipson reports.
Any parent knows raising a child is no walk in the park. But when people of colour in America teach their kids about respect, it's a lesson often tinged with fear.
Be respectful at all times, because all it takes is a phone call for police to be there and a situation to be escalated. And I think that's sad.
A month before Bonita Buck entered the world, her mother Twana had an altercation with police that changed her forever.
I was aggressively grabbed and aggressively spoken to while I was 8 months pregnant. And it was really a shock and a wake-up call for me.
She wasn't physically injured, but she's convinced it wouldn't have happened if her skin colour was a lighter shade.
There are a lot of people who wake up and they don't have a care in the world. They don't really have to worry, you know? I want her to experience that feeling of just being safe.
No justice, no peace! No justice, no peace!
African American children are front of mind for many of those fighting for equal justice in the turbulent wake of George Floyd's death.
Y'all don't understand what it feels like as a black mom to release your child out into this world. It's scary.
Claiborne Carson was one of those beaten by police and jailed during his generation's fight for justice in the 60s. Now, a civil rights historian, he hasn't given up.
I was in Los Angeles when the city exploded in 1965, so that was more than 50 years ago. We remember what happened after Rodney King was beaten by police and the city exploded again, and that was over almost 30 years ago. So this is not new.
He says history keeps repeating because the conversations black parents have to have with their children are repeating as well.
You don't have to give the warning to a white child that a policeman may kill you. The person who is supposed to protect you may kill you.
Since the days of Martin Luther King, there has been some progress in the black community, particularly when it comes to education. But on many lead indicators, there's still huge disparity, and none more so than criminal justice. Since the late 60s, the percentage of African Americans behind bars has almost tripled, with black Americans locked up at 5 times the rate of white Americans. Tracy Brame spent her early career defending young men of colour in court. Now she watches with some trepidation as her own son comes of age.
His shoulders are broadening. He's now taller than me, and he has a little fuzz right here. And I'm like, oh my God, he looks like a young man, which both makes me incredibly proud, but makes me more and more afraid, kind of by the year, that he's going to have an interaction, that ends badly.
Of course, many black-white interactions are positive. For best friends Maxwell and Finnegan, 3 months quarantined together in a country house in upstate New York was as good as it gets. Now they're catching up via video link.
Who wants to drive the truck?
Last year, a viral video of the inseparable duo touched people around the world, and it's making the rounds again.
People started reaching out, and we've seen a lot of things that said, wow, this is still relevant, and it's more relevant, I think, than it was before.
The need for change is something Maxwell's dad is now acutely aware of.
It's scary, and, Alex and I will do all we can to protect him, but we can't protect him when he's not with us.
Nobody really knows who's next. It could really be any one of us. That's a scary feeling. That's way more scarier than getting out and protesting today.
Day by day, the crowds and the sense of purpose are growing, and the people involved seem determined to close the circle so the next generation doesn't have to.
We'll be back tomorrow and the next day and the next day as they were chanting every single day until the change is made.
David Lipson, ABC News, Washington.
When the pandemic shut down religious services in March, many churches scrambled to shift online. 2 months on, and it seems that live-stream services could be here to stay. Religious leaders say their eyes have been opened to new digital opportunities, and online church has been surprisingly popular with young and old.
Barbara King's new Sunday ritual is to kick back and enjoy church from her couch.
It refreshes me for the rest of the week. Yes, so it really is lovely because I just feel part of it.
2 months ago, she could barely use her smartphone to make a call.
He is risen indeed. Hallelujah.
Then her Anglican church in East Maitland in the New South Wales Hunter region went online.
I don't feel like I've missed out on anything really. I've just been so happy to have this, and I've been all my friends on Facebook.
All glory and honour be yours always and everywhere.
Mighty Creator, ever-living God.
It's also been a baptism of fire for priest Scott Dully.
Let's do it live, let's do it once, and we'll hope for the best and make sure it goes okay.
He says the uptake has been overwhelming.
The engagement afterwards of people looking at the live stream has been quite surprising to me, actually. Over 1,000 views of one of our services was pretty stunning, really.
After initially being uncomfortable with the idea, Reverend Dully now says streaming will become permanent.
We're hearing enough feedback from our parishioners and from the wider community to say that this is something people are looking for. And I think it's a really great way to engage with people.
For Catholics, streamed services from Newcastle's Sacred Heart Cathedral have been gathering thousands of live viewers. It too now wants to make it a mainstay. Barbara King says she's glad to know the option of a digital church is there as she gets older.
It's brought the outside world into the house, and that's been lovely because I haven't felt isolated at all.
Melding old traditions with new opportunities. Ben Millington, ABC News, East Maitland.
Ovals, running tracks, outdoor pools and waterways were again abuzz with junior sports teams and budding athletes today. Kids and their coaches are busy preparing after the state government confirmed that competition could resume in July. Some sports have found creative ways of training during the pandemic, as Jessie Dorset reports.
They've grown up watching the superheroes on screen. Now they're learning some of their moves on screen.
He's coming for you next. No, he's not. Yes, he is.
What? Themed Taekwondo lessons delivered via Zoom have allowed these young martial artists to practice blocks in lockdown.
They have loved it. We've had extreme numbers online. It's been challenging.
And so they're ecstatic to get back to in-person sessions next Saturday, when indoor sporting facilities can reopen across the state.
We really miss the social aspect, not just between us and the students, but the students and students. Those are things that we miss. We love it a lot.
Among the safety measures, spectators won't be in the studio.
However, we give them a Zoom option where they can actually view their kids in a remote location.
Aussie rules is also a little different.
If you were here on a Sunday morning, 12 months ago, there'd probably be 400 kids running around on this ground and parents loitering around the outsides drinking coffee and the like.
Now, just 3 groups of 10, including the coaches, are allowed on the field at any one time. To protect themselves against COVID, they're training for a contact sport without the contact.
So we're doing a drill basically where you want to get the ball to come straight towards you.
And there's no tackling?
No, because the coronavirus distance, yeah.
As part of the new rules, just one parent or guardian can attend training. Players bring their own water and sanitise their hands before and after each session, and all of the footies are wiped down.
So that's roughly 20 to 30 footballs before and after.
How long did that take?
A few minutes, let's put it that way.
Never been so shiny, right?
No, never been so shiny. They're absolutely pristine.
Ready for the first bounce next month. Jessie Dorset, ABC News, Sydney.
The Knights have ended Canberra's perfect run with a 34-18 upset win at Campbelltown Stadium. Newcastle is now unbeaten after 4 rounds.
They've been touted premiership favourites, but the Green Machine stalled in the opening minutes. Kalen Ponga marked his return from a one-match suspension. The Knights fullback set up the opener, then scored Newcastle's second.
Oh, wow. What a spectacular run from the superstar number 1.
A flying Jack Whiten got the Raiders on the board.
Down there, the line, great leap, great catch.
A penalty try put the Knights in front by 10 at half-time. That lead doubled after a double from Edric Lee.
Edric's got another one.
Josh Papali tried in vain, but it was Best who finished it off for the Knights the way he started it. The Sharks overcame a pre-match scare to win their first game of the season, beating North Queensland by 10 points.
Brilliant!
6 Cronulla players failed their initial COVID-19 temperature checks, but they all passed a second test and were allowed to play. Jesse Ramian and Ronaldo Molitano both scored twice for the Sharks.
Goodbye, Cronulla! We'll go out by 10!
Cowboys fullback Valentine Holmes struggled in his first match against the club he left to pursue his NFL dream. And the NRL has admitted the forward pass decision that cost Manly a victory against Parramatta was wrong. The Sea Eagles thought they'd won when Ruben Garrett crossed over in the dying seconds, only for the touch judge to rule Tom Trebojevich's pass forward.
It just confirms the night we had, didn't it? You know, we didn't get much rubber to green tonight.
Manly lost by 3 points. Daniela Intilli, ABC News.
Australian tennis player Alex de Minaur is unbeaten after 2 days of the exhibition round-robin event in Spain. De Minaur, who has a Spanish mother, has been based in Alicante during the coronavirus pandemic. The 21-year-old defeated Spaniard Pablo Carreño Busta 7-5, 6-4 in a match without spectators.
All right, there it is. Alex de Minaur, it's an impressive win. Very entertaining match. Both these guys plays at a high level. Little elbow bump.
De Minaur will face the world number 12, Roberto Bautista Agut, in his final match of the event. Time to check the weather now, and it was a cold, frosty and foggy start to the day for many parts of New South Wales, especially the interior. Sydney, though, was cool and cloudy with a few coastal showers in the afternoon and evening. Light southerly winds strengthened as the day went on. Overnight lows were well below average, except for a few coastal areas. The coldest spot was Perisher with -8. There were some isolated showers along the southern half of the coast, but generally it was dry and cloudy for much of the state and clear skies elsewhere. Daytime maximums were generally below average due to the cloud cover. 22 was the warmest it got, and that was at Lismore. Nationally, a high-pressure system is keeping the south of the continent dry and very cool. Canberra got down to -3 overnight. The cloud you can see is causing a few showers in the east, but only the odd light shower in the west. It was mostly clear in the northwest and central west in drier winds, and that's what's been leading to cool days and chilly nights, chilly enough for that frost and fog. A high-pressure system over the Bight currently extends a ridge into New South Wales, while a low-pressure trough lies just off the coast. Around the capitals tomorrow, sunny and cold in the southern cities again. Canberra expecting some early fog and frost. Around New South Wales tomorrow, there'll be a few showers about central and northern parts of the coast and the adjacent ranges. Winds will be south to southeasterly, fresh along the coast. There'll be some early frosts about the ranges, slopes and inland, mainly in the south. And some morning fog in the east, chiefly on the tablelands. It'll be cold and sunny in the southwest after a foggy start to the day, sunny and cool to cold in the northwest. Winds on Sydney waters will be southerly, reaching 25 knots. Showers are forecast for Sydney tomorrow. We can expect fairly light falls, somewhere between 3 and 8 millimetres. A cool and cloudy day with a top of 17 degrees. The sun will rise at 6:54 a.m. and over the next 7 days there's a good chance of showers right throughout the week, except for Wednesday and Thursday. Overnight lows will be between 10 and 13 and daytime temperatures getting no higher than 20. So overall, a cool, often cloudy, often showery week ahead. And that is ABC News Sunday. From all of us, enjoy the rest of your evening.